Every board gamer needs to play the game Twilight Imperium 4th edition at least once in their lifetime. It isn't just a board game, it's an experience. But if you don't have time to get this to the table, or you're interested in a different or lighter version of TI4, you might consider looking at some of these 10 games that share some of the same mechanics, feel, or themes with Twilight Imperium. This is Legendary Tactics. I can't tell you how many times I've played a game and said, that reminds me of Twilight Imperium. If you've also had this experience, please slap the name of the game that reminded you of TI down in the comments. Here are the top 10 games that remind me of Twilight Imperium. Number 1. If you're looking for another game that has a rich technology set in space that focuses on exploration with great components and hexagon tiles, you may love Eclipse. It's an abbreviated and streamlined cousin to Twilight Imperium, and it scratches the same itch in a much shorter time. They've recently repackaged the game, and it's much more accessible now. Many people consider this game TI Light because, like TI, it's a deep strategy game that focuses heavily on territory control and also technology growth. Number 2. One of the primary mechanics that stood out in TI when I first played it was the strategy cards. I messaged the designer of Puerto Rico, another game that I really love, to find out if there was any influence from Twilight Imperium on his design of Puerto Rico. He hadn't played it, and he didn't know TI at the time, so the similarity is purely coincidence. What is strikingly similar, though, is the use of TI strategy cards, which serve the exact same function as the roll cards in Puerto Rico. While this mechanic was novel when these games came out, it's much more common now, and I know these games are incredibly different, but I hope you'll allow me the comparison simply for this one mechanic. Selecting a role that benefits you more than all the other players while also rewarding everyone at the table is a great way to include all the players in the gameplay at once, and both games do this really well. Likewise, another game, New Frontiers, which comes from the Race for the Galaxy family, is a game that shares this mechanic, as well as the space theme. Number 3, one of my favorite games of all time, also set in space, which uses variable player powers that significantly impact how each faction plays the game, is Cosmic Encounter. Most of you have likely played or heard of this game, so I won't belabor my comparison. But this element of variable player power adds variety to each game and also an asymmetrical feel to both of these games. Another honorable mention for this category is a Kickstarter game that I really enjoyed playing, Rogue Angels. Its alien species and their various backstories pay homage to TI, and the rich background that each different race brings to the game adds a lot of flavor. And by the way, if you like Twilight Imperium, please consider liking this video too. This encourages our creators to do more content on this incredible game. Number 4. I'll talk for a moment now about the 4 features of 4X games. Space Empires 4X is a game from GMT that, like many other games on this list, offers a complete 4X experience in a much shorter time frame than TI. Though it's not flashy and it relies more on spreadsheets and counters and miniatures, it captures space exploration and tactics really well. Your engine will get off the ground much more quickly, your income will grow steadily, and you'll still get the feel of galactic conquest in a much shorter time frame. Though Space Empires 4X it has one of the worst looking boards that I've ever seen for a space game, 2 hours feels like 20 minutes when you play this. And what I really enjoyed about Space Empires 4X is the tactical side of the exploration. Number 5. Games that focus on expansion are all about claiming new territory, creating new settlements, and exerting influence over parts of the board. Another game that takes advantage of the expansion element of 4X, though this one is set in a dystopian 1920s age, is Scythe. Exploration isn't quite as foundational in this game because you can see the whole map from the outset. For that reason, expanding your forces is much more important in this game. Though Scythe isn't really a 4X game, if you're interested in the expand and the exploit elements of TI, Scythe might be worth a try. The next X in 4X that really is felt in TI is Exploitation, and this involves gathering and using resources in areas you control or by taking them from other players. While Space Empires also does this really well, I've already covered it, so instead we'll compare TI with a game that I've been playing in its computer form for a very long time. And now it's a board game, Civilization: A New Dawn. This game doesn't emphasize military in any way. The map is completely revealed to start, and players are racing to collect resources and to use those resources. So this game is a much simpler game, and it lacks much of the depth of TI, but it offers some comparisons with the modular board, albeit different format, and variable player powers as well as area influence. This is probably the weakest of all my comparisons though. On to number 7, and this is the final X, Extermination. When I think about Extermination, the last of the 4 X's, the first game that pops to mind, I know, forgive the comparison, Cry Havoc. It's got great miniatures with tons of variability and asymmetry in the factions, lots of points of connection there. And while resources are the source of conflict in Cry Havoc, the conflict itself is actually the best part of this game, whereas TI is a much more comprehensive game. But Cry Havoc is a game about epic battles that it doesn't even use dice. The battles are super focused and efficient, but they still offer you a wealth of choices to make. While TI takes much longer to get to the combat, players often spend much of the game posturing. When it comes down to the actual fighting, both of these games are a gas. If you watch this far and you're not already subscribed, please consider stabbing that sub button. On to number 8. If you're looking for another epic space opera, one with multiple boards, a box full of over 100 miniatures, some asymmetrical combat, and even a pile of cards and tokens, Star Wars Rebellion might offer the heft that you're looking for. This game's focus is completely different because it's all about hiding or finding the rebel base, depending on which side you're on, and it has a strong narrative and cinematic feel if you're familiar with the storylines, albeit told in a different order, because the game makes you feel like you're the commander of an entire galactic empire or of the complete rebel alliance all at once. But when it comes down to it though, this is a heads-up war game, so slightly different from TI in that sense. Number 9, player relations. My 9th pick might be one that many of you object to, but it's an essential part of Twilight Imperium, and that's how you use diplomacy with the other players at the table. You need to rise up out of the game and forge real connections with the other players through trade, resource sharing, secrets at the side of the table, or mutual territorial agreements. And all of these features are also central in the classic board game, Diplomacy. More importantly, in both games, you always need to be ready for a massive backstab. Number 10. We could compare just about any space game to Twilight Imperium, such as Gaia Project, Race for the Galaxy, Terraforming Mars, or even Firefly, which is incidentally a really fun pick up and deliver game. But beyond the theme, many of these games just don't compare. But there is one game that captures the same 4X world building feeling, the same epic civilization growth, the same feeling of territorial discovery, the same tactile handling of miniatures. And though it's based on planet Earth, Clash of Cultures is a nice streamlined version of Twilight Imperium. It clocks in around 4 hours, but its designer, Christian Marcuson, adores the majesty of TI and has created a tight, accessible version of TI that captures its spirit well. Clearly, what makes Twilight Imperium so great is that it accomplishes all of the elements that these other games do, but in one box. Let me know in the comments if I've missed any games, or if there's some games on my list that you don't think should be here. Thanks so much for your time.